Hey everybody, Randy Patterson here with Boomerocity. And we interview a lot of people on here, and many of them are names you instantly recognize, and others are up and comers that you will soon instantly recognize once you become aware of them. And then there are people who work behind the scenes. They're not necessarily a household name, but they've been in the business a lot of years and they've been involved in so many different things. And Steve Postell is one of those kind of people. He's been involved with a lot of studio work. He's been involved with Broadway, musical scores on movies, TVs. He's done commercial jingles. This guy has done it all. And he is one of those top shelf musicians that people in the business highly respect and seek after his talents. In fact, I recently watched the Immediate Family documentary, which I highly recommend. Already had this interview scheduled. I had totally forgotten that Steve was part of Immediate Family. And as I was watching the documentary, up comes his face and name. And I was like, holy cow, this guy is everywhere. And this album, I can just tell you right now, buy it. Don't stream it, buy it. You're going to want it, own it, support our musicians. But this new album, it's called Walking Through the Blues, is an amazing album. It's not necessarily a blues album. I would call it more of a very cool Americana. If you like David Crosby, if you like James Taylor, if you like all that kind of acoustic sound, you're going to absolutely love this record. I do. And I'm wearing it out. If you can wear out digital recordings, I'm doing it. But this is a great album. Steve Postell is a great artist, a great human being, and this was a very fun interview. So I encourage you to listen to it. And while you do, as I always ask, would you please hit like? Would you subscribe to our channel wherever you're watching or listening to this from or on? And it just helps us out. I'm not going to charge you for it. So please, if you would, it just helps us out, and we can keep doing more programming like this. So without any further ado, here is my first interview, and I hope there's a lot more coming in the coming years, with phenomenal musician, singer, songwriter, producer, engineer, Steve Postell. Until next time, this is Randy Patterson with Boomerocity. Take care. Hello, Steve.
Look what's behind you with pictures of me.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of making me paranoid, man. Somebody's looking over my shoulder here. And everything looking back at you. I got to say, I love that little picture that was on your screen before you popped on with the frog and the guitar, man. That's cool.
My alter ego.
I don't even know what mine is. So, where are you clicking in from?
I'm in my studio here, and it's in Marina Del Rey, California.
Oh, okay. I was thinking you might be in New York or something.
No, I'm from New York, but I live here now. And you're where?
I'm in the Smoky Mountains of East Tennessee. I'm just a couple miles up the road from Dollywood, believe it
Oh,
or
okay.
not. So,
Okay. How far is that from Nashville?
I used to work in Nashville a few years ago, and when I would drive back and forth, it's about to go from downtown, about 2 blocks from the Ryman to my doorstep was on a Friday afternoon, about 4.5 hours. Any other time, probably 3.5 to 4.
Okay.
So fun town though. You're going to be playing there later this year, aren't you?
You know, we were, and I think something happened with the scheduling. I think there was a conflict. So I think not this tour. Pretty sure it was the city winery there, and I think
Yeah.
I think that got changed. That got moved.
Oh, okay. Well, man, I love this new album of yours.
Thank you.
I've shared it, clicks off of, what's available on social media and such with people. And the feedback I'm getting is great. I love the vibe of it. There's, it's still in a general groove, but yet there's a lot of variation in there. And it's not like the same track over and over again that I hear with some albums. But tell me the story behind this and how it came together and how long you worked on it, that kind of thing.
Well, as throughout my whole career, I've always made my own records. Like regardless of what else I'm doing, because I'm always writing. So,
Hmm.
so there's always so whether I have a record deal or not, I'm going to be making a record. And I've always had from very early on, I've had my own recording studio. So I've been
Hmm.
able to record what I want. So it was time. I had 14, 15 songs, which I pare down to 11, 12. So I started recording the record without a label at the time, and was pretty far into it. And then COVID hit, and being not a household name, putting out a record when I can't go play makes no sense.
Right.
So I kind of pulled back and said, I'll just keep working on it, and I'll write some more, and I'll mix it some more, and I'll bring in other guests. That's how I got Crosby to come on because he was available later than it would have been. Um, and then right when it seemed like it was pretty much done, the other band I'm in, the immediate family, we made a record.
Hmm.
Well, I'm not going to compete with my own band. So I said, let's wait again. And anyway, so things went on, and the timing was finally like we're in between records and immediate family, and in between tours, and Corto Valley approached me and said, "I hear you have some music recorded, and the rest, and it was the right time with the right people."
Very cool. Well, speaking of immediate family, I knew I had this interview with you scheduled, but I wasn't, it was not my motivation in doing this, but I was having to do a bunch of editing over the weekend. I, on a fluke, stumbled onto the documentary, which I don't know. I mean, I get all sorts of news on stuff. I had no idea this documentary was out there.
Huh.
And I got on there and then I started watching it. And it was like, wait a minute, I'm going to be talking to Steve next week. So I didn't realize that you were that neck deep in with those guys. But man, what a great documentary, and they showcased you very well in there, which leads me to a question. I mean, pretty much everybody in there were rockers for the most part, even though they've played, and you all have played all sorts of different genres. What led you to for this kind of sound, this kind of vibe, this kind of boundary of style of music on this particular record?
On my record,
Yeah.
well, I mean, again, so you write for different things at different times. So when I would write for Media Family, it would write more rock and roll band kind of thing. But my influences and background, obviously, most of people my age started with the Beatles, but the people who really, listening to the James Taylor records and the Jackson Brown records and the Van Morrison records and then the Little Feat and the Eagles and the band, like everything was all that music that inspired me to do my own work was song based. Number one, the song was the king, and but played really well with really interesting arrangements. So serving the song. So it's nothing like I'm reaching for something. It's just that's what I love the most. I mean, I love
Hmm.
all kinds of music. I love blues. I love R&B. I love, but hearing a great song played by wonderful musicians and beautifully arranged, it's just that's always been the thing for me. So that's just what I
Yeah.
try to do. I don't try to be in a genre or a style.
Yeah. What struck me is the various, oh, what am I trying to say here? Just the various senses of influences there. I mean, on one hand, I think there was a couple songs on there that I was listening to, and I thought, well, if nobody had told me what they were playing, I would be thinking these were some lost tracks from James Taylor or something like Pipestone Lake and Wicked Wind. Those two, man. I mean, you really, it's like, very much like a James Taylor type of thing. And then yet the others where you had David Crosby on. I mean, gosh, I was trying to figure out which song would be my favorite from the album to turn people onto. I can't pick one because they all have a great hook for one reason or another in there. Is that the same kind of feedback you're getting from people who've been able to hear it?
I must say, I mean, look, I think it's really, you always think your work, I mean, I think it's good. Took a lot of time, but I'm getting tremendous feedback, and I've kind of been trying to analyze it, like, what is it about this record? And I mean, there's a couple things, and one is that I really had time to get it right. Like, I mixed this record over and over and over and over again, and then I had Ed Cherney, the late brilliant engineer, come in, and after I thought it was mixed, and he was like, "Well, here's what I think," and he gave me some pretty amazing advice, some of the best advice I've ever gotten in my life, actually, and I mixed it again, and so I know it sounds good. I had time to make it sound good.
Hmm.
But I think another thing that's going on, because the response has been so strong, I actually think people miss this kind of music.
I
That's
agree. I
that's what I
agree.
think. I think that there's a lot of other music out there with all the tuned vocals and everything quantized to the grid and the replacement drums and all. But to hear, but I mean, are people ever going to get tired of hearing a good song played by good real people live? And I think
Real
it's
talent.
I think it strikes a chord. I really
Yeah,
do.
I agree. I agree. I think we've seen so much where, kids can go into the spare room and compile all this stuff through a computer and, you know, have not even 15 minutes of fame, but 15 seconds if they're lucky. But to see real talent come out through yourself, through your peers, the people you love working with, that I know people notice that. They really do. And they
I
notice
think
the attitude behind it too.
I think they feel it. I think that people who, like yourself, who are sort of engaged in this our world, kind of get the details of it, but your average listener doesn't know why, but they feel it.
Yeah.
There's a guy who's called Wings of Pegasus. He's a young guy who's got a YouTube channel where he takes all this music and shows on a graph how they're tuning everything. And some of it's kind of shocking. I mean, I don't want to give it all away. Who some of the people there's like, oh my God. Sometimes not even singing live, like people you would be sure would be singing live. And
Wow.
and and it's kind of some of it's pretty shocking. I mean, it's not shocking to me that some of the big pop stars are singing to tracks and having their voice doubled or whatever. But some of the people you would be surprised. Anyway, I do think there's something. Look, we can do magic in the studio now. I mean, it's real magic, and I love
Yep.
that. I came, back when I started, there was no, you had to go into a studio, pay a lot of money, and you had 8 tracks and then 16 and finally 24, and that's it. And you had to, and it was a great way to learn. I'm thrilled. What I have in this studio, you couldn't even dream of back when I started,
Yeah.
the capacity.
Yeah.
So I love it, but it can get abused. And the way it's abused, in my opinion, is by making everything homogenized. The voices
Yep.
all sound the same, everything's tuned, everything's exactly in time, every drum is moved. It takes away the experience. I really think it does.
I agree with you. And to see it, I mean, it's one thing if it only happens in one genre, but then when you start seeing it, you know, cross pollinate all into all the other genres, I mean, crap, we can't even listen to country music anymore without it. I mean, Don't even
No,
get me started. Anyway,
no, it's interesting. I had a funny experience. I don't know how much time we have, so I'll keep this
all
try
the
to.
time you want.
Oh,
So I'm
so
wide open.
I was in the dentist chair getting a tooth pulled, and he gave me this what nitrous oxide laughing gas, and I don't do drugs or drink or anything anymore. But I was like,
Right.
wow, I'm really high right now. That's cool. I went to the dentist, I got high, and then he split, and the radio station or the Sirius whatever it was, the satellite station was modern country.
Hmm.
And so it'd be like five songs that are on the country charts now, and then every sixth song would be like a Fleetwood Mac song or an old Dolly Parton song, and just sort of snuck in. And especially being in that state of a little bit altered state, I started to realize that every song was exactly the same. That they were all the vocals were so tuned, and the drum parts were lined up if they were even real drums, and then there would come a Fleetwood Mac song and be like, oh, and the feeling. Forget about the I like it better, but I would
Right.
start to feel better, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think young people don't even know that they're missing because
Yeah.
everything they listen to is doctored to up to the wazoo. Now I love the tools, so there's nothing wrong with it. Like if I'm doing a vocal performance and I do six takes and there's one where the emotion was really right and there's a note that's a little off, I'll tune it, of course.
Right. Right.
It's a
Why
great
not?
tool. It's
Yeah.
a great tool, but not
But not
every
the whole, not the whole track.
every note. No.
Well, I think that's why, the style of music that you've recorded with this album, and let's put it under the broad umbrella of Americana. I think that's the reason why it has come back so strong, and why some of the people from back in the day are still doing well, why the Eagles can get a residency in Vegas and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you have to have real talent for that. And when people hear it, they want to do it. I call it, causing people to rise to a higher level of excellence. They makes a kid want to get a guitar and sit down and learn it, or sit at the piano and do better, you know,
And
or
the good
realize they have no talent and then they quit.
I mean, the good news is, on some level, it's getting through. Now, I know some of this was COVID and people were stuck at home, but guitar sales, which is an indicator of what people are liking to do,
Hmm.
have skyrocketed in the last 5 years. They were way down, and to
Hmm.
the point where guitar manufacturers were worried, and
Yeah.
they've come way back up. And I think so. I think I mean, it's good for me that people still respond to real players and real singers and real songs, but I think they do.
I want to deviate a little bit because we're talking about the technology and catalogs from way back and that kind of thing. So I want to sidetrack a little bit. I did not write this down, but I've asked some others who I've talked to over the last few months their opinion on this. I'd love to get your thoughts on it. On one hand, we see where people, especially people from our genres that we love and grew up with, that you contributed to, they're selling their catalogs.
Yeah.
And I understand that. I mean, they worked hard for it. We're at that age in life. I'm 65. The people I love listening to are my age or older. And we're on the other side of that hill. And so why not cash in or cash out and get the money? It's easier to divvy that up amongst the kids and grandkids.
Yeah.
But then, and I thought, okay, cool. And, the Mucky Mucks will make their billions off the catalog. But then this whole thing with AI started coming up. And one concern I've had, and I'd love your thoughts on this, these catalogs are winding up in the hands of a few. And I'm a free marketer, so all right, more power to them. But my concern is what's going to happen when they start bashing that with AI, and if depending on how the contracts are written, what happens downstream with AI. Now, I do think what's going to happen, and this I wish it would happen before people started selling their catalogs, there's going to be truer accounting for royalties because AI will get out there, grab all the data, and say, all right, Steve's owed a bunch more money than he normally would have gotten. But so I hope that's one good positive effect. But I'm concerned about creativity downstream. What are your thoughts on that? And what do you have concerns with AI
Sure,
and these
sure,
catalogs being sold?
sure. Now, understand that there are people our age. There are people who are stuck back in technologically in the old days, and there are people like me who I love technology. I always have, and I keep up on technology.
Hmm.
So, and AI is creeping into all the plugins I use. It's doing amazing things that I can now do in the studio that I couldn't do 3 years ago.
Right.
Um, there's here's where it gets tricky. Here's a few. All right, friend of mine owns a very successful jingle company. They do huge, the biggest products in the world, and they're one of the top. So the way the jingle industry works is that the or the advertising that they hire four or five, not hire. They reach out. So Coca-Cola, let's say, will say to four of the top jingle companies, we need a new jingle, and they won't pay anybody. And the four jingle companies will try to write their best thing, and they bid for that. Now, back in the old days, we used to get paid for those demos. No more. You don't get paid unless you get the account. But if you get the account, it's lots of money. So the process is the jingle company, like my friend's company. So he'll write something, and then he'll bring in a singer, and usually program the track because these days you can program the track. You bring in a singer, make the demo, and they send it off to, let's say, Coca-Cola, and then the other companies do. Well, my friend would have to hire that singer. Then if they get the gig, Coca-Cola might say, we like that singer, let's get a different singer or whatever. And my friend had to coach these singers because he knew he's a great writer, great musician, exactly what he wanted. Sing it like change it to. So he tried something a few months ago. He sang, he can't sing at all. He sang it. He knows exactly how he wants it to go. And then he told AI, make that sound like a combination of Whitney Houston mixed with Mariah Carey. So that jingle singer just
Holy
lost
crap.
just lost $1,000 date.
Oh man.
Now
Yeah.
he said, "Look, I feel kind of guilty, but on the other hand, it's exactly what I want.
I
It's
mean, it
my
takes what it'd have taken them to get the singer to get it that way
yeah,
versus
right.
AI getting it,
It
or coming up with four versions of it. Hey, the Whitney Houston and Beyonce mix versus Elvis and Frank Sinatra, or do this as a duet or what. I mean, I get it, but still.
so that's an interesting. I have mixed feelings about it. I totally get what he's doing. Now he
Mm-hmm.
will hire a real singer if they get the account. Thank God. So that's true. Um, you know, I was just in here last week. Danny Kortzmar came in and he wrote a bunch of new songs for his catalog, not for the immediate family, and we brought in Bernard Fowler from the Stones to sing, who
Love him. Yeah.
sang his butt off, and we were just saying, look, AI can't write or sing these songs, not like this. They can't. It can do something that sounds kind of like it, but they can't do this. AI
Hmm.
can't write the record that my record that you're listening to. It can't do it. I don't care how advanced it gets. It can't do that. What it can do, the problem is what it can do is someone who's not sophisticated, it could make something that sounded close enough to it that they go, it sounds the same to me. Um, so look, a lot of very smart people say that the biggest threat to civilization is not nuclear war. It's not, it's AI. So And I've heard that more than once. And because it's going to do amazing things, it's going to cure cancer. I'm sure
Hmm.
that's the next, it's got to be the next step. But it's going to do some very strange things as well. So I have mixed
Yeah.
feelings about it. I love, look, I have a program now. One of the things when you mix is using your ears. I'm glad I train my ears to hear competing frequencies for people who don't know. So that would be like if the piano and the baritone guitar both have a boost in a certain EQ frequency, they're going to compete with each other. So you have to hear that and go, okay, let me take that frequency out of the piano and keep it in the. This thing just finds it and does it.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
so the
Interesting.
bad news is that someone who's young and doing will never learn to develop their ear and be able to find those frequencies themselves.
Or AI can create a course to teach them, try to give them the ear training to do that. But, you know,
It could.
possibly, I used to design and sell pools and I learned doing it by hand, hand drafting
Yeah.
2D. And then I learned CAD. And after I got out of it, now there's 3D. And it's just, why
So
learn hand drawing when you can learn it on the computer from the get-go? So,
look, so it's got advantages, it's got disadvantages. I hold on to the belief that true creativity done by actual human beings will always have a place in our culture, and I hope that's true.
I hope so too. Because that's the only way it's going to inspire others to do the same, you know, in my opinion. So you've worked on a lot of different recordings for a lot of different people as well as your own. What was the biggest difference in putting this album together versus all the other stuff you've worked on?
One of them was the time element because of the thing I explained before with COVID and then with
Right.
immediate family having records. Um, having having no time pressure at all. There wasn't a record company. I mean, by the time the record company got involved, the record was mixed and done, so nobody was breathing down my throat. I was in no rush to get it out. So one of the differences was um, just really taking my time and changing things and writing a new song. I mean, halfway into the process, I wrote a song with Glenn Phillips, the singer from Toad the Wet Sprocket, and
Hmm.
and and I was like, hey, well, I can put it on the record because the record's not really done. So we finished it, called Steve Ferroni to play drums on it, and I'm really glad it's on the record. So I think the biggest two things. One is having the time, and two is I hope that I'm always evolving as an artist. And I feel like that I'm, in certain ways at my peak creative level, even if maybe I don't know, I haven't timed it. Can I play as fast as I could when I was 20? Maybe, I don't know. I practice all the time, you know, probably close. Uh, but so so the combination of, I mean, I'll give you an example of how you evolve as a musician if you want to. I mean, some people they get to where they are at 23 and they just live on that and play in the bar
Yeah.
band. But if you're still curious and trying to and always trying to grow, one of the things that happens, and it happens to me all the time, is I'll be in the car or I'll put something on that I've heard for 40 years. Whether it's a Beatles song or Hendrix, and all of a sudden I'm hearing it like I never heard it before because I hear so much more now.
Yeah.
So, wow, I never caught that part and this part or this sound or listen to that tom sound, whatever it is. So I know that my ear is constantly being instructed by everything I've heard in the past, and I'm at a point where I remember when I was at the conservatory, I studied classical composition and music, and at the conservatory, I was really blown away by the orchestration and conducting students because they could look at a score, not even hear it, look at it, and hear, you know, 20 instruments in there. And I'm like,
Hmm.
how can anyone do that? Now I can't do that, but I can hear three guitars and a bass and two keyboard parts and the percussion and the background. I can hear all that, you know.
Right.
Um, so I think the advantage of of having done this forever and and evolving with it and you know, all these experiences, if you let it, they inhabit your being. So everything I do, some interview said, "Well, which do you like more, engineering or producing or playing or singing or?" Well, I like that I do all these things because it's all one thing to me. If I'm just
Hmm.
sitting here engineering something, I'm using my ears. It's getting into me as a musician. So I feel
Hmm.
like making a record now is taking advantage of all of this exposure, influence, inspiration of all these years. You know, the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours, but for me it's 100,000 hours, you know.
Well, I would imagine at this stage of your career, it's probably hard to surprise you on something, but were there any surprises while you were putting this record together?
Yeah, there were. One of them was on one there was one song. So I when I write a song and it's written and then I envision how it might be produced and orchestrated and sometimes things will come to me both in what kind of part it needs or which guitar would sound good or but also who would be good on it, who would be a good
Hmm.
guest. When I wrote the song Buried Stone, after I wrote it, and even I think after I cut the basic tracks, I said, you know, this I hear this as a conversation actually between me and a woman. Um, and I hear a certain kind of voice, and that voice, and then I heard who it was. It was Becca Bramlett, the way she sings, and I called her up, and she was like, "I'd love to do it." And I said, "Well, just go to town. Like, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I don't like to tell musicians what to do if they're great.
Hmm.
I might suggest some things after the fact, but I like to see what their creativity brings to the table." And she came up with some just really unusual parts and that were like, wow, that's I would never have thought of that. That's beautiful, you know. So there were things like that. I mean, there were things where I assumed the person would give me that, like Alfonso Johnson. I wrote a tune
Hmm.
that I could tell really needed a very fluid and melodic bass part, and he's one of the best. So it didn't surprise me that it was great, but he surpassed what I had hoped it would be. And that was true with a lot of people on this.
Wow. You mentioned Becca. It reminded me that brought to mind, not reminded me, but brought to mind Bonnie Bramlett. And gosh, I interviewed Bonnie several years ago and promoted Christian concerts back in Phoenix for a while. And she opened for Joe English when they were both coming out with Christian records. And man, she blew the roof off of that church. It was a 1,200 seat place, but I've lost track of Bonnie. She used to be kind of active on Facebook and all that. She seems to have fallen off the face of the earth. Is she doing okay, or do you know?
I don't. I don't know.
Mm,
I mean, I never
that's
met her. I just know her daughter, Becca.
yeah, yeah. But well, back to the album. The from the I never ask artists to pick their favorite song because it's like picking a favorite child, right? But which song, and this may even change from day to day or hour by hour with you, but which song would you point to as a calling card? Now, I've floated a couple out there to my network, but I'm curious. But since this whole thing is your family of kids of songs, which one do you point to and say, "Hey, if you like this song, the rest of the album's just you're absolutely going to love."
Right. Which is a different question than what's your favorite. And it's a good question. I think that's why I chose as the title of the record, aside from the concept I like, is Walking Through These Blues, because it's got a lot of elements of what I do.
Hmm. Hmm.
And if
I agree.
if you like that song, you're probably going to like the record. Is the answer
Hmm.
to your question? I think it's got some wonderful performances on it. Um, it's a really cool groove that I stole from John Mayer, and it's funny. I was teaching a lesson, and the student wanted to learn this John Mayer song, and John's a obviously great songwriter and singer, but he's a fantastic guitar player. And what my
Hmm.
student couldn't figure out was what he was doing with his right hand on the guitar. And it was just this cool little pattern, and I taught my student, and then later I was like, "That's a cool pattern. What? Let me change it to minor and see. Oh, it sounds great." And the song came out of that. But I think that's it's got a lot of what the rest of the record has on it. And in terms of personally, and I'm sure it's because partly the song and partly to hear his voice was When the Lights Go Out, and to hear David Crosby's voice on
Hmm.
that. Uh, the first time I played it when we were mastering the record and I heard his voice, I kind of really
I bet.
not that I forgot that he was on it, but just to hear it so in my
Yeah.
face. And that's a beautiful and that's the one that Alfonso Johnson on and this beautiful guitar player named Mark Schulman who plays it with me. And so I'm really proud of that piece of music, you know.
Yeah. Well, speaking of David, what you care to share some thoughts about him? He's been gone a while now, but what a musical treasure we lost when he passed. Share some thoughts if you don't mind.
Well, I mean, David was, well, as anyone's read anything about him knows, he was a bigger than life character,
Hmm.
and he was that both imposing physically and as a when he walked in a room. Um, and over the years, he ruffled some feathers, as everybody knows. Um, I had a very great relationship with him, where if he we kidded we were able to kid each other like
Hmm.
it was a funny thing. So there were no feathers ruffling going on. We would make fun of each other basically if anybody got out of line, and it was done with great humor. Um, well, he was just out of another kind of era, in that I mean a lot of those guys from that time were, but David was an avid curator of information in life. He wanted to know things. I never left his house ever without a book being put in my hands. You got to read this one, you know, or you got to listen to this new young artist. You got to hear Sarah Jost if you haven't heard her here. Okay, here's a record. Uh, so he maintained this beautiful curiosity, which I think is the biggest part of being a great artist is being curious about the world and your as well as your art. And he was really well read, and he was a connoisseur of art, sculpture, and literature, and music, and jazz, and um, extremely bright and a gifted obviously at what we do. I mean, he was like David didn't know the name even of the chords he was playing, really, a lot of the times. Uh, but he didn't have to because he heard it so deeply. You know,
Yeah.
when he was teaching me the guitar parts, his hands had gotten uh, problems and arthritis and this and that, and he had
Yeah.
some surgery, and the surgery didn't work. So that's how it ended up. Why don't I'll play the guitar parts and you sing, and that's what we were going to do.
Hmm.
And when I would play back his intricate part, if I played two strings in the wrong order, he would go, oh, no, third string,
Wow.
like that level of
Holy
specificity.
cow.
And so he knew what he wanted to hear. He knew what to him sounded right. And I think all those guys were like that. We're going out on tour doing this CSNY thing called Our House. And so I've been listening real carefully to some of the songs and again, these days you can use AI to break out the vocals from the tracks and really listen to them in a way that I never could when I was putting on the record and trying to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And some of it is so sophisticated, harmonic, the harmonies and the vocals. They just did it. I wish I could have been in the room, but it wasn't. They weren't writing out, I'll sing a G and you say, they were just doing it.
Just did it. Yeah.
And but it's not straight ahead. It's some pretty complex stuff.
Yeah.
But he was a great artist in my opinion, and a fascinating, wonderful guy.
Cool. What biggest positive and negative changes in the music industry that you've witnessed? And if you could change it, what would you change?
Oh wow. Well, there's an interesting thing that I've noticed, uh, and I'll since we have time, I'll give you a quick story that
Sure.
a friend of mine who's a beautiful musician, guitarist named Tarek Akoni. He's Josh Groban's musical director. He's played with Stevie Wonder and David Foster and all these people. And occasionally he puts on, as I do, some sort of benefit or some sort of special show. So he was doing a show, I think it was called The Songs of 1973. It's going to be all songs of that year. And he said, I
Cool.
want to end the show with you and me doing Hotel California. It'll be a great end of
Wow.
the show. Well, it's not a corny song, it's a great song, but it's so overplayed that I never bothered to learn it. And it's like, well, I got to learn the solo. It's the most important part of the song in a way that
Right.
when at the end when Felder and when they were doing that double guitar solo. And so I started to learn it with headphones, and I went, I wonder if someone probably teaching this on YouTube saved me some time. Well, not someone, 1,000 people are doing it. Like literally hundreds. Like, you know, who took it apart and are teaching each part and so I picked the best one and learned it like right away. Now, the only disadvantage of that is that when we had to do that using our ears, we were developing our ears.
Right.
And when we had to do it with a record, we really were developing our ears because you put the needle down, you had to try to get 4 bars in and then replay. So that's a disadvantage is people's ears aren't as good. But the advantage is from a very young age, if you're interested in learning your instrument, you don't even need a teacher. YouTube is a tremendous teacher. So what you have is incredible technicians in all these young musicians. And they're all over YouTube, bass players and drummers and guitar players who can technically play rings around almost everyone my age. Faster, more, all this stuff. The the downside of it is that a lot of them don't have a lot of soul, let's to put it
Very
bluntly.
mechanical.
It's a little mechanical. They haven't lived. They love music, and that's great, but they haven't, it's not related to, they didn't get it like we did going to play in a bar 6 nights a week, and so there's something, so as it's two-sided. I mean, the best of them do have that, the
Hmm.
ones who rise up, but all of these technicians lack, I had an experience with that. There was some contest, and I can't remember what it was, but the winner, one of the prizes was a lesson with me. Go figure. So this kid came in, probably 19, fresh out of one of the music schools, I forget which one. And so I listened to him play, and he could, technically, man, he was playing twice as fast as I can play, could do the tapping and the this and the that, and knew all the chords, and knew, so he was on one level very advanced. Then I said, what's a song you know really well, like that you've heard a million times? Let It Be. I said, play me the melody of Let It Be. Couldn't do it.
Whoa.
So so his musicality was sort of, he'd skipped all this stuff and he was up in the top stratosphere. So that's sort of the good and the bad. The lack of opportunity. So it's not their fault. You can't go play 7 nights a week anymore. Doesn't exist.
Yep.
When I was coming up, every other bar had a live band in it, you know,
Yep.
and paid for those bands to play.
Right. Now you got to play for tips. Yeah.
if you're lucky.
Yeah.
And if you didn't have to pay to go play in that place, which you do in
Hmm.
some places in LA. So so there's a there's sort of a fundamental, and I see this in film. I see this in a lot of things. Like film is it's technically, first of all, it's all digital now, and you can do anything. You can create any effect. You can edit quickly, but then you go back and watch The Godfather, or you know any of these brilliant films, and there's a humanity and a depth of the artistic expression
Agree.
that, so I feel like that I'm hoping the humanity will catch up because the technical thing is great. There's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with it. Um, everyone was always talking about, well, digital sounds a little harsh and it's not like tape. Well, there's many of them. I just got a new plugin that you look at it and it's a tape player going like this, and you put the track through it and it warms it up as if it was going onto tape.
Yep.
And that's great.
Well,
That's
I
great.
was even hearing something from one, I forget who told me, but you can have these plugins for like on Pro Tools or whatever, where, I want a 59 Les Paul and I want, a Vox amp and,
Oh, yeah.
and it's just, and you're just plugging directly in from probably
Oh, yeah.
some cheap guitar into the computer and it's creating all this classic sound for you.
And I'll be honest with you, it's gotten so good that probably 60% of the time I don't plug in an amp. And here's they're so good, and I collect this stuff, so I probably have 40 digitally uh, simulations of amps.
Hmm.
The advantage of doing it that way is that I can change my mind at any time.
Yeah.
If I'm in the middle of a mix and I go, guitar's a little too harsh or it needs more, I just switch the amp or
Right.
switch the cabinet, switch the mics on the cabinet. So um, would I say it's still, is it as good as when I put a ribbon mic and a SM57 on a nice old Fender Twin? Probably not, but it's awfully close.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, you can and getting better all the time. That's the other thing. It's getting
Yeah.
better all the time.
Yep. What would you like to do that you haven't done already?
Well, I think actually something that I'm probably gearing up to do. I mean, I've done a lot of things and it's been great. I mean, I've been on Broadway, I've scored films, I've toured, I've done all these, I wrote about classical ballet, got to see ballet dancers dancing to my music. There's a lot of cool stuff. Um, what I'm hoping is which is looking like more and more possible is that I can actually tour more as just me.
Hmm.
I've done it, but I think I'll be able to do it more and more, not in a band. The bands are great. Love
Hmm.
touring with immediate family or with our house, our new band or whatever. But I think that one of the last frontiers for me is that Steve Postell is going on tour with or without a band. That doesn't matter. But that's who's on the bill, and I get to play that music. I did a show, the CD release show 2 weeks ago, and had Leland Sklar on bass and Dean Parks on guitar
Wow.
and Stevie DiStanislao on drum. This beautiful band, and it was just such a thrill. And we sold out 2 shows, and people came to see the music that I write and play.
Hmm.
So it's not that I haven't done it, but to do it more consistently and sort of as an actual tour, um, more tours of it. It's something that I'd like to do more.
You would be the destination instead of a discovery.
Yeah, that is, all the things. That's kind of where it's all leading, and I have a pretty good resume at this point. Where if they
Hmm.
haven't heard of my name, they've seen the Immediate Family film, or they saw the CSNY thing, or they saw heard me on the Crosby record. You know, like there's more cross-pollination with all the things that I've
Right.
done. So that it would be, hey, let's go see what this guy does, you know.
Right. What else is on your radar for this year? I mean, this thing's going to get you a lot of attention, I would imagine. And, there's you got touring coming up to your point you were just making, or what's your schedule looking like for this
Well,
year?
the next thing, which is really happening in a week or almost, is so after I put this band together with David Crosby and his son James Raymond that we were gonna go out and play, and David passed away a month before the first show of what would have been who knows how long of a tour we would have done.
Hmm.
Um, and 6 or 7 months later, we did a tribute to him at the theater we were supposed to start at, so that because the people had their tickets. So if you have that ticket, come, we'll play the music. And I invited Sean Colvin and Colin Hay and Richard Page and Chris Stills, and we did this wonderful tribute concert of basically the set with the band we'd put together and the set that we'd put together. And that's turned into a thing which I was reached, some people reached out to me, you should, people would like to see this, can you take it on the road? So this is our second tour. We call it Our House, and it's a wonderful band. And we start in maybe 8 days or something. So that's
Oh, wow.
the next thing. We're playing like 20 cities around the country. That's the next immediate thing. Um, and I'm always producing records also. So there's always stuff going on in the studio that I'm working on.
Yeah.
But and then after that, I there's probably going to be some more immediate family shows. And I think we're working on something for September. And the immediate family, it was difficult as Waddy's out with Stevie Nicks all the time. Leland and Russ are out with Lyle Lovett all the time. I've been out with Our House or with my thing. So it's like, is there a chance you guys could all actually be together for a week? You know, and that's gotten a little difficult. But I think that the next focus after the Our House tour ends will be putting together shows for me. And
Cool.
yeah.
Well, I hope that between our house and your solo tour, maybe you'll be somewhere within driving distance for me, and I can be able to catch you one way or another. I'd love to meet you in person, and it because you know I'm not a musician. I'm not a professional journalist. I don't think I consider myself a fan who gets to talk to people like you, and so for to have somebody of your nature, and it happens a lot with me now, but 16 years ago when I was starting this, it was hard to be taken seriously, right? But I just love hearing what you guys have to say. I'm not an engineer, I'm not a producer, not a musician, but I love that nuts and bolts stuff, and I appreciate you, sharing that with me. I know a lot of listeners and viewers around the world that catch this will appreciate that too and enjoy that inside baseball type of stuff, and but I hope you get to come somewhere near here,
Oh,
and we can
I'm
meet up.
sure I will. Yeah, I'm sure I
Yeah,
will.
well, I'll keep an eye on that. So one last question, and we'll wrap everything up. And I've asked this of a lot of your peers over the years. That's when this tour bus of life stops and at that great gig in the sky to borrow from Pink Floyd. How do you want to be remembered? What do you hope your legacy is?
Well, that's an interesting question. I don't give that much thought. You know, I don't do this for legacy or for the kudos. You know, I do it out of this deep love of music, which started when I was 5 years old.
Hmm.
Um, you know that I hope that I mean, I'm recognized. I did this with authentically, with integrity.
Hmm.
I got good at it, and I moved some people. Some people put on my music. You know, occasionally I'll get something, someone will find me and say, I'm in Germany, we got married, and we used one of your songs as our wedding song, and
Oh, cool.
I don't know how they found me or someone else to say, my father passed away, and I listened to this song about your father, and
Hmm.
so if some amount of people get to hear it and it moves them or gets them through their day, that's a great thing. And if the people who get to work with me and know me knew that I showed up on time, in a good mood, ready to work, and delivered,
Boy, novel concept, huh?
you know, that's about it.
Well, cool. Well, man, I'm glad we got to talk. I love this album. I genuinely mean that. But Steve, any in the future, if there's any other projects you're doing, whether you're working with a publicist or not, just know my door is open to you. I'd love to help out any way I can. I mean, I'm not Rolling Stone magazine, but thank God. But I do have people who like dropping in on Boomerocity, seeing who I'm talking with next, and it's all about who I'm talking to. It's not about me. So please keep me in mind as a positive outlet of getting the word out, and same with your friends. Anybody you know is looking at putting something like this together, I'd love to help them out as well. So
That's great.
let's
And we need people like you. It's not an isolated thing. If you just stay in your room, ain't happening. So we
right.
appreciate that there are people who get it and like to talk about it and like to share it. It's very important.
That's the name of the game there. So yeah, my door is always open to you, and hopefully I get to see you sometime in the coming months as you're out on the road. And in the meantime, please stay safe, stay healthy, and let's try to talk again soon. Okay.
That sounds great. Thanks so much for
All
having
right.
me. Great
All right.
interview. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate it as well. Take care.
Take care.
This has been another stellar episode of Boomerocity with your host, producer, and friend, Randy Patterson. The theme music is Roll the Dice by our good friend Quentin Hope, and all rights reserved and used by permission, of course. Post-production is done by Cardinal Sins Productions. The Boomerocity name, logo, and content is copyright protected, so all segments may only be used with written consent by Boomerocity and or its assignees. You should direct your inquiries to input@boomerocity.com, and the copyright is 2025.